Alright everyone, welcome to the Tonto's Demise Week 4 recap. As you can see, I'm a little bit displeased, got the arms crossed, kind of leaning back. Uh, it's been quite the weekend, I'd have to say, in more ways than one. Actually, while I'm thinking about it, still recovering from last week. Still trying to rehydrate from after last week's recap video here. Let's see. Trying to think of where we should start. Let's see. There's so many things I wanted to talk about. Well, there were a couple things. Maybe only like one or two, really, before I got into the actual week recap here. And the first one was, actually, this might have really been the only one, was the whole kneeling thing during the national anthem. Brian and Detling talked about it a little bit last week. The whole thing is silly and overblown. If you don't like someone kneeling for the national anthem instead of standing up and covering, putting your hand over your heart, I think there are bigger things to concern yourself with than how someone does the national anthem. And it's now pretty widely known, and I don't think people realize this, that they've only really come out of the locker room and stood and celebrated the national anthem for about 10 years now, after the government paid them, it was only like $5 million or something like that, to make rules to stand out there and be out and salute the flag during the national anthem. It's funny because it reminds me of a joke in The Simpsons where, I think it was the one where Homer becomes a boxer, and before the big match at the end, they say, due to, by popular demand, they're going to skip the national anthem before the fight. So this whole crazy patriotism thing didn't really start until, I think, after 9/11, where it really became such a ticky-tack thing where if your patriotism is called into question, if you decide to voice any sort of dissenting opinion about the country in general, the state of affairs going on, that it's disrespectful to not stand and salute the anthem, which is completely, like I think Brian mentioned this, it's completely off base from the initial protest by Colin Kaepernick when he took a knee. He was trying to do it to call attention in a respectful way to things that he, as a human being, sees in the world and in the country that he feels are unjust. And it's his way of trying to bring attention to that. And when you're in a position such as him, where you're a public figure, it has much more of an impact. To do something, a simple act like that is going to draw attention from the media. So it's a good thing because, like I said, he's going to draw a lot of attention by being a celebrity, a public figure. And the people who, making the argument that you're disrespecting the people who fought and died for the flag and our freedoms, it's a ridiculous argument because the freedom that Colin Kaepernick is expressing by protesting, he is engaging in those freedoms that were fought for. We wouldn't have those freedoms if people in the past had not fought for them so that we can have them, and currently are fighting for them across the world. It's not disrespectful to those people. We have those freedoms because people fought for them, and it is patriotic to stand up and voice your opinion, even if that opinion might be a dissenting opinion. And that's one of the beauties of our freedom here in the United States, is that you are free to express your opinion, no matter how many people may agree with it or not, and you're free to speak negatively against the government, the president, within reason, of course, because they are not dictators. They are supposed to answer to the people. They work for us, and that's really the way it's supposed to work. And the people who have turned this into it's disrespecting the anthem, you're turning it into a political debate. And when they're trying to draw attention to actual things that are going on, and other people will say, hey, stick to sports, that's the only thing that you're good at, that's the reason we give you attention, you're just out there to entertain me and play football, and I don't care about your opinion. It's really just another form of dehumanizing these people, because they are, at the end of the day, no different than you or me in terms of having human feelings and opinions and emotions. So they're not robots. And it's very similar to, I've seen people say that about sports figures and celebrities, especially like comedians and things like that. But the people, especially the most famous people who criticize politics and things like that, and aren't afraid to voice their opinions. And people say, just stick to acting, just stick to football or whatever. These people, the most famous and well-known celebrities, they are not stupid people. They are quite intelligent, and they wouldn't be nearly as successful as they are if they weren't very smart people. So, at least for the most part, you can make a case probably that not every actor is a wise and intelligent person, but for the most part, they're human beings just like us, and they're much more successful than we are, but they're not, in part at least, because they are thoughtful, intelligent, caring people who are willing to put themselves out there for criticism, just by simple fact of being a public figure here. All right, I'm looking at the timer here already on the video, so I think that's enough of talking about that. Let's see. The whole thing is silly, I think. I'm not good. There's one other thing I could mention, but I don't really feel like going into that either. But it's not that it's silly; it's that it's being taken way out of context, and I'm just thinking this is why I can never be a color commentator, as Jim says, because I fill everything with ums and hms and have to pause and think about what I'm going to say before so it's less than entertaining, I think, for probably some of you. But anyway, Then, of course, there was football on Sunday, and then there was Monday, which brought the largest mass shooting in United States history, I believe. Which, if you're aware, these things actually do happen almost every day. Not on this level, but it's frustrating to believe that people still will cling so desperately to the idea that the words of the Constitution are debatable, and things that were written 250 years ago. I don't think that when they were writing these things that they could possibly imagine that we would someday have weapons that could, vaporize 1 million people in a matter of seconds, or guns that can fire off 10 rounds a second, and when used improperly, kill large amounts of people in a very short amount of time. These are weapons of war and battle, which war in things like creating conflict is a whole nother issue that this is not at a time or place to get into a discussion about, but there really is no need for a civilian to have these kind of weapons. You can argue that you need them, people do need them to protect themselves, but to a certain extent, there's no... I don't know how someone really is going to need, the average person is going to need an arsenal of these weapons, these ridiculously efficient and dangerous weapons. They are tools to kill, and that's what they're for. It's that simple. And we continue. It's a simple study of the facts and numbers that we are the country where we're the only place where these things happen so often, and are as deadly as they are, because we refuse to regulate in any way. And I'm sure that it's much more to do with protecting finances and money and keeping things flowing than it is with actually being concerned about defending your Second Amendment rights, which you could pick and choose things in the Bill of Rights and the Constitution that you like and you don't like, and you can analyze every single word and do this and do that. My personal opinion is that it's ridiculous for anyone to need or have access outside of police and military to have these kind of weapons. And if we don't do something, I think we've been desensitized to these kind of actions that happened there in Las Vegas in part because they're so frequent, but on the other hand, how do I want to phrase this? What actually took place at the same time is so just disgustingly horrific that I don't know about you, but it's almost easier to just choose not to think about it and to just go on with your daily life, which is a whole lot easier than standing up and voicing your opinion and subjecting yourself to potential criticism for having that, whatever your opinion is on the topic. So really, it's just, we have to start somewhere, and we refuse to do anything. And thoughts and prayers are not enough. Anyway, so after that, So I think I might have mentioned this on the lineup. So reading about the news there and the shooting in Las Vegas, like, oh, I'm going to go on Twitter because that's usually a good source of getting quick access to news articles and information. I think better sources than Facebook or TV, a wider variety of sources and opinions to get there. And Tom Petty is a trending topic. And so I click on that, like, oh man, what's going on now? And find out that Tom Petty has basically been found in cardiac arrest and rushed to the hospital, blah, blah, blah. Don't know how long, he was without oxygen and stuff like that. And then, of course, not long later, they reported that he had died, but then that was retracted, and eventually it came out that he didn't pass. It was inevitable, and I believe he passed around, it wasn't until maybe 11:30 our time here last night. So, it was just a shocking thing to have someone who is so iconic from all of our childhoods. Maybe not everyone. Everyone has their varying opinions on every artist, and which is certainly to be expected. But Tom Petty was, I think, in a lot of people's, if not your top 5, your top 10 of classic, legendary musicians who we've grown up knowing and experiencing, and some great song. I think I said on the lineup too that we listened to Tom Petty all night tonight at work, as we did for David Bowie, we did for Prince whenever they passed away, we did some Soundgarden whenever Chris Cornell died, and there's no better. I don't know how else to better memorialize Tom Petty than to say that he created a body of work in which, I made a playlist and we listened to Tom Petty for like 4 hours, and this included songs that, rarities, things that on albums maybe that the tracks that nobody really has ever paid much attention to, but I think I can honestly say that he has created probably at least a 3-hour body of work in terms of how many songs, and I could just listen to that and never get over and over and enjoy it and never really get tired of it. That he created that is something to be thankful for. When these people, even though it's sad when they do pass, we have to remember that to be thankful for the things that they created and bring a lot of joy and emotion into our lives. They are people just like us, again, with celebrities, whether they're football players or comedians or musicians. They are, at the end of the day, they are people just like us, experience things just like us, feel things and care about people in the world just as much, if not probably possibly more, because they're willing to take that emotion and that feeling and create things with it, which a lot of us don't actually have the ability to do, so it's an admirable thing. I think Kevin said, what are your top 3 Petty songs? And I think Brian said he would answer that in the podcast here. So for me, it's hard to narrow it down, but I would have to, because Tom Petty, the thing about it is there's so many good lines in his songs, scattered about, just great lyrics, and it doesn't, for me, I don't know about everybody else, but it doesn't really matter how good the music may be. If a song doesn't have lyrics that can pull you in then it's never going to be that good or that appealing. Like, it has to have those things together. Um, for me, one that I always seem to come back to for whatever reason is The Waiting. Just a great song. And I mean, I don't want to just pick songs off of the Greatest Hits album because there's so much more than that. But another one would have to be Free Fallin', I think, because, like I just said, there are such great lines in a lot of his songs, but in that song in particular, each little segment of lyrics tells just a little story, and you can let your imagination run away with it. And the story kind of goes through each verse, he adds on to a little bit more, and just each one, I don't know, it's just that kind of sort of like I wanted to describe it as like a sort of wistful nostalgia that that comes forth in those lyrics. It's just that's probably yet another one. And to finish a third one, I would have to go with, for me personally, I don't know how many you might not really know this song, but there's a song on the last DJ album, which is called "Have Love Will Travel." And from the first time I ever heard this song when I got the CD, there's always been a line that stuck with me. Like one of my favorite rock lyrics, which is hard. It's hard to say because there are, first of all, there are so many good ones all over the place, and Tom Petty has so many just by himself, but this has always been one that's stuck with me. And the lyric is something like, I believe he says, "How about a cheer for all those bad girls and all the boys that play that rock and roll? They love it like you love Jesus. It does the same thing to their souls." I just something about that lyric that I find very profound and meaningful. And that's just always, at least me personally, that's always stuck with me. And that song has always had a special place to me among the Tom Petty catalog. So, but another one has to, I don't know how many people have actually heard this song either too, but if you haven't, please check it out. It's called "Girl on LSD," where Tom Petty, each verse is discussing a different woman that he dated, and each one is on a different form of drug. LSD, of course, cocaine, marijuana, caffeine, beer. I think coffee. It's not caffeine, but you get the idea. But it's a really great song. It's very entertaining and humorous, and enjoyable at the same time. But it was just a difficult thing to hear, and a surprising thing to hear about his loss, because he's definitely one of the more influential musicians, I would say, in our lifetimes in rock and roll. And it's always a sad day when those people leave the planet. But like I said, it's important to celebrate them and the great things that they did, and be thankful for the gifts that they gave us. And those gifts will live on long after he's passed away. All of these artists who create things, they leave things behind that live on long after them. And it's a beautiful thing if you really stop and think about it. Each one of us could only hope to be so lucky as to create things that live on much longer than we do. So, all right, enough about talking about this stuff. Let's get into the reason we're actually here is some fantasy football. We got Kevin Bean back here this week, and hopefully he's feeling a lot better. Excuse me, after his kidney stone debacle. So Kevin, hoping you're a lot better. At least, if not, you're at least on the road to recovery here. And the first matchup from week 4, as always, we have the defending champion, Gags to Riches. He was trying to get his first win of the season, and he got it. Both teams who were winless got wins this week. And let's see, Gags to Riches, he takes down the Mighty Midgets. A lot of low scores here this week. And another injury going, more injuries for the Mighty Midgets. Final score, 131.2 to 103.95. All right. Since we're already 25 minutes into this video, I'm going to try to get through this as fast as we can. I'm sure you guys are already tired of listening to me if you haven't skipped past all that other stuff to get to the stuff that you're actually interested in. All right, Gags to Riches. We're just going to go right down, I think, instead of back and forth, we're just going to go right down each person's roster here. Gags, Drew Brees, 50 points. Devontae Adams, 9.5. Rashard Matthews, 8. Des Bryant, 14.5. Marshawn Lynch, 1.2. Jeremy Hill, 1.6. Travis Kelce, 24.5. And Sterling Shepard in the flex, 10.5. Tucker was your kicker. Yahoo says 3, a little bit more than that. And New England defense for Gags, Yahoo says 8. I think it was actually maybe 5. Probably one of the biggest surprises of this season so far. I know Gags took the New England defense first off the board, and I know I was upset because I wanted New England's defense because I mean I don't know that they've actually played any of these teams yet. Have they've got the Bills, the Dolphins, and the Jets. That's 6 games. Well, I think one of them would be Week 17, so that doesn't count. But at least 5 games against 3 teams that are kind of, at least in the preseason, they seem to be just a mess. Buffalo looks like they might be the real deal. At least, I mean, they don't have any superstars, but they're playing solid football and playing good defense. So they might, I think they're first in the division. They're doing better than New England. But this has been one of the weaknesses here, which I'm sure everybody thought would be one of Gags' strengths coming into the season, the Patriots defense, and they let you down here. But you did win, said, so it could be worse. As for Mighty Midgets, said he had a couple more injuries. Ty Montgomery went down pretty early in the game, only got 2.8. Chris Carson, you didn't have him in the flex, so he only got you 4.2 before going out with I think was it a knee injury? I haven't really looked into him yet. Let's take a quick peek at Yahoo here. I'm sure I'm the only person who doesn't know yet. A leg break and an ankle issue, it says. So he's out for a long time. Mighty Midgets, he had Aaron Rodgers, about 43 points. Brandon Cooks, 7.2. Looks like he had maybe a little bit less than that because he had some rushing stats. Kendall Wright, just over 15. Jaron Brown, not John Brown, Jaron Brown, 18.5. Pretty good plug and play there for you. Said Carson and Montgomery, not much there from them, plus they're hurt. Montgomery actually looks like he might not be out for too long, though. Jared Cook, 7.5. Chris Thompson, only 1.7. Surprising there in your flex. Folk, a couple field goals. Yahoo says 3. And Washington defense, not much from them. They only had a couple sacks, gave up a lot of yardage. Yahoo says 7. I actually think it was... I want to say it was only 1, if I remember correctly from last night. because I mean, this matchup could have gone either way if Travis Kelce had a quiet night, because you still had Kelce. He had Kelce, I think, and said you still had Chris Thompson in your flex and the Redskins defense, which, based on last week, could have been pretty good point scorers for you. But Chris Thompson, surprising there, he only got you, excuse me, 1.5 points. So you only got like 2 or 3 points combined from Chris Thompson and the Redskins defense. I remember thinking that last night. Like that's just disappointing, frustrating, I'm sure, for you. So yeah, Mighty Midgets with his 103 points, he is eliminated from the knockout pool this week. He gets a loss. He's in 11th place. Unfortunately for Gags to Riches, even in victory, he is still stuck in 12th place. All right. Next matchup, we're just going to go right down the line. We had Hillbillies on PCP versus Skellahor Isotopes. This one kind of went down to Monday night because the Isotopes still had Tyreek Hill and the Chiefs defense, but needed, I think, 54, something like that, combined from those two, which is a tall order. Just from those two guys there. They weren't quite able to do it. I think they got about halfway, a little more than halfway there. Hillbillies on PCP gets the win. Final score, 167.15 to 145.95. For Hillbillies, Phillip Rivers, 48.5. Antonio Brown, only 7.5. So Brian's got to be thankful to still squeak out a victory here this week when he has Antonio Brown only go for 7 points. Probably one of the lowest outputs of his career, or at least for the past few years anyway. Then we had Demaryius Thomas, 2 points. Devontae Parker, 13 points. Jordan Howard, 11, a little bit over 11. Here was the backbreaker. I still can't believe that this happened. Bilal Powell with 160 rushing yards and a touchdown, a long touchdown, which it was like a 75-yarder. He had more rushing yards on that one carry than he'd had on the entire season up to that point. So that was very frustrating. So let's see, with that touchdown and all those yards, 16, 22, plus the bonus, 25. So, 28. So you got about 28 points there in a 22-point margin of victory here. So Bilal Powell was the big difference maker here. Maybe if Forte had still been in, it would have been different. If Bilal Powell had done his production that he had the first 3 weeks of the season, this matchup would have gone the other way, but no, it was not meant to be. It's embarrassing to say that you were beaten single-handedly by Bilal Powell. Seems like that guy's been around forever and done nothing. And here we are this week. Anyway, Delaney Walker, 8 points. Christian McCaffrey, only 9 points. Your kicker, Lutz, a little over 9, maybe 10. And then the Denver Broncos defense, another strong game from them. Yahoo says 12. I think it was more in the lower 20s. And it was enough to get a win over the Isotopes. They went with Simeon at quarterback, which was the difference maker, also a difference maker in this matchup, because I was back and forth pretty much up until game time between Simeon and Carson Palmer. And if I had gone Carson Palmer, I would have won this matchup. But no, I went with Simeon, who got 29. Alshon Jeffrey, 12. Tyreek Hill, 8.5. Stephon Diggs, almost 15. Todd Gurley actually had to cut out 16.5 of his points because they were receiving stats. So he got a little bit over 20, 21 or 22 there. Jonathan Stewart, 5 points. Gronkowski, 12. Tariq Cohen, 8.5, almost 9. McManus, about 10 points from him. And the Chiefs defense, finally, Yahoo says 15. I think it ended up being about 24, something around there. But it wasn't quite enough. Like I said, actually, I don't know if anybody else noticed this, but pretty much all of the long touchdowns, I think there were 4 this week, and 3 of them were on Brian's team. Phillip Rivers, Bilal Powell, Tyrell Williams on his bench, because Rivers to Williams was one of the long touchdowns. And then the Jacksonville defense also had one for Josh there. So 3 of the 4 people who got points for long touchdowns were on Brian's team this week. But anyway, with the win, Brian stays undefeated. He is 4-0. He is in first place. And with the loss, the Isotopes dropped to 1-3. They are actually only in 8th place, stuck among the handful of quite a handful of 1-3 teams that we have here this season so far. All right, next, New Gods Mad Titans going up against the Dub C Hooligans. New Gods Mad Titans, who all day Sunday we had to hear, boo-hoo, woe is me, I forgot about the Sunday morning game, and I left Jay Cutler in instead of Marcus Mariota, and I'm going to lose in this whole season. This whole week is crap, and the season is terrible, and everything's falling apart, and New Gods Mad Titans wins this matchup, despite all of that, over Dub C Hooligans, 140.6 to 135.1. So, sorry, Jimmy, there. Gotta poke you a little bit for what we had to listen to there on Sunday. I understand that you're, in real life, under a lot of stress and having a lot going on, but it was entertaining for us to watch. With the win, New Gods Mad Titans, he had Jay Cutler, 25.5, Terrell Pryor, 16, Emmanuel Sanders, 6.5, Travis Benjamin, 4, a little bit over 4, Melvin Gordon, only 2.2, C.J. Anderson, just under 100 yards, 9.5 points from him, Jason Witten, only 2 points, Le'Veon Bell, looks like he may be back into form here. That was a big difference here in this matchup. He had 37.5 points. Boswell was your kicker, a little bit over 8. And you had the Packers defense, Yahoo says 19. I think it was closer to 30, actually. So pretty good matchup there. As for Dub C, this matchup was actually only a 0.2 difference after the early and afternoon Sunday games, with Dub C only having Tyler Lockett left and New Gods Mad Titans having Terrell Pryor. So it was a battle of your remaining 2 wide receivers, really. And Terrell Pryor was actually able to get just enough production here to outscore Lockett. And the 16 points that Terrell Pryor scored were his season high. So far he's gone 12, 5, 4, and now 16. So sorry about that there, Kevin. You had Prescott, who you went with over the quarterback that you traded for to have the Winston to Evans connection. You went against it this week. Cost you the win because Winston had like 55 and Prescott only had 44.1. Mike Evans, 17.5. Marquise Lee, 3.5. Tyler Lockett, looks like he had some rushing stats here. 10.5 from him. Isaiah Crowell, only 2. Mark Ingram, 4.5. Ertz at your tight end, a little bit over 13. Buck Allen, back in the flex. Not a 20-point week this week, only 10.5 from your Baltimore flex running back. Kicker, you had Bryant from the Falcons. Looks like he only had 1 short field goal and 2 PATs. And then the Arizona defense, they were what made this matchup close after the 4 o'clock games. They won the game, so you got some extra points there. It went to overtime and almost completed overtime, I think. And I didn't know this now that I'm sure it wasn't the first possession, but I know San Francisco kicked a field goal, and I guess I thought after the first two, they changed it apparently this year. It's just begun that I wasn't really aware of until now. That I guess you get another chance in overtime if it's not a touchdown. It doesn't have to be the first possession. I know it used to be that if you got a touchdown, game over. If you kicked a field goal on the first possession, the other team got a chance. So apparently, if you kick a field goal, the other team gets a chance no matter when it is. I'll have to actually look into that and see what the actual new rule is. But anyway, they were able to come back and throw a touchdown to Fitzgerald and actually get the win there. So it got you some extra points. So it was only a 0.2, not 2, difference there. So a 2-yard difference between your teams. And unfortunately for you, said Lockett was outscored by Terrell Pryor 10.5 to 16 there, making up the 5-point difference in the matchup. So, New Gods Mad Titans, he is in the rough, difficult position of being 3-1 now, and in third place. Sorry, Jimmy, but gotta do it. Dub C Hooligans, he is bunched up with the 1 and 3s. He is in 9th place. Next we had Everybody Ertz going up against FC Bahorik. And this one, another battle for a winless team. And I'd said already that both winless teams got their victories this week. And Everybody Ertz knocks off FC Bahorik. Final score 162.15 to 131.6. For Everybody Ertz, his plug-and-play quarterback from a couple weeks ago, pretty good pickup, looks like. Definitely better than Trevor Siemian, for me at least. Jared Goff, 41.5 points from him. Julio Jones went out with an injury after only 6 points. Looks like he might be all right, though. They had their bye this week, so that's good for whatever minor injury that looks like Julio has. Golden Tate, 6 points. Deshaun Jackson, only 4 points. Fournette, looks like 14.5 for him. Frank Gore, 4.5. Jimmy Graham, 10.1. Devontae Freeman in your flex, just under 16 points. And he did score a touchdown, so I think he scored a touchdown every week so far. So I'm not really sure what's going on with the Devontae Freeman effect this year. You've been losing, you won, so it might just not be a thing anymore. I don't know what happened to it. I'm disappointed. I enjoyed witnessing the Devontae Freeman effect there for your team. Anyway, your kicker. What is going on with this guy from the Eagles? He has 19 on Yahoo. It's probably more like 20. This guy just came out of nowhere, and he's kicking like. What did he have last week? Last week he had 11. This week he's got 20. That's ridiculous. You're getting crazy amount of kicker points here. Then you had Seattle defense. Great matchup there at home against the Indianapolis Colts. Jacoby Brissett. They had 2 defensive touchdowns. That's probably the biggest factor in this matchup was the Seattle defense there. Yahoo says 27. It was definitely a little bit more than that. I want to say 35 or 36. If memory serves me right. Enough to get a win over FC Bahorik, who's gotten a couple disappointing weeks so far here from Matt Ryan, I'd say. Take a quick look at his numbers. Matt Ryan has been in the mid-30s the last 3 weeks. He started out in week 1 with a 45-point total, but the past 3 weeks here, he's only been right in the mid-30s. This week, only 33 points from him. AJ Green, 17.5. Keenan Allen, 18.5. Pierre Garcon, 7.5. Kareem Hunt, just over 13. Gillislee, just under 5. Charles Clay, good pickup and play here for a tight end. He's been so far for you. Just over 16. Larry Fitzgerald, a little bit over 13. Prater was your kicker. Looks like 2 field goals. Missed 1. Yahoo says 4. Big difference from the 19 there with that Eagles guy, Elliott. But it was a little bit more than that. And you picked up and played the Tennessee Titans defense. And I think we know how that game went versus Houston. They gave up 57 points. They did have a turnover and a couple sacks. Yahoo says 5, but I think it was actually 2 because they lost and gave up too much of every other possible point-getting category we have here. So everybody Ertz, he gets that win. He's 1-3 along with all the other guys. He is in 10th place. Well, with the loss, just FC Bahorik, he falls to 2-2, but he is still in 4th place. Next matchup, we had Possum Magic. After a slow start, they're coming back to life. I think 1-2 in a row now. Taking out Space Antelope this week. 153.95 to 137.8. For Possum Magic, another big game from Russell Wilson. 50 points from him. His receivers, Sammy Watkins, 2.5. Jermaine Kearse, 5.5. Kenny Britt, 8.2. Which reminds me, I'm going to take a quick look here and see. As we all know, he spent the 100 free agent dollars on Higgins from the Cleveland Browns. And looks like he scored a big 0 this week. You had him on the bench. I think he only scored like 3 points last week. So in the 2 weeks that you've had him, he's still stuck at 3 points. So you spent. I'm sorry, Tree. Got to kind of laugh at it a little bit, but you spent half of your. I mean, we can laugh at it now in hindsight, but you spent half of your free agent dollars on this guy and have gotten absolutely nothing for it. So you can't help but find it kind of funny. Maybe you don't find it funny, but it's definitely amusing to the rest of us. Running backs, you went with Lamar Miller and Ezekiel Elliott. Moved McCoy down to the flex, which most weeks is going to be a good play. This week, it turned out to not be. It would have been better to keep flexing Ezekiel Elliott. But those guys, it's a crapshoot. It's going to change every week. I'm pretty sure LaShawn McCoy was actually the better flex play every other week of the season until this week. Of course, that's how it works. When you put in McCoy down to the flex, and it was Elliott who did better in terms of receiving stats. Let's see, Lamar Miller, he looks like he had 2 touchdowns and 70 yards, so about 20 points from him in that 57-point blow-up there. Ezekiel Elliott, he also had 2 touchdowns and 85 yards, so a little bit over 20 from him. Hunter Henry, 9.5. LaShawn McCoy, just under 14. Your kicker was Dan Bailey. He had a couple PATs and 1 field goal. Yahoo says 6. So it's a little. You always got to tack on. I said this before, between half a point to 1.5 points usually to whatever Yahoo says your kicker got. And then Minnesota's defense didn't do too good. They had 6 sacks, but they lost the game. Didn't give up a whole lot of yards or points though. Yahoo says 12, so I think it was just a little bit more than that. Enough though to take down Space Antelope, who suffered a devastating loss with Dalvin Cook. Even though he did have 60 yards and a touchdown, I believe he fumbled the ball away on the carry where he tore his ACL, and of course, as we all know, is done for the year. So you got 10 points from him. Let's see. Cousins, we'll just start right here. I guess we should just start right at the top of the lineup here. I'm having some difficulty with Safari here for some reason. All right, Kirk Cousins, just under 37. Jordy Nelson, 23.5. Doug Baldwin, 8.5. Kenny Stills, 4.3. Terrence West actually took you backwards. He had -7 yards, so a -0.7 for you. Dalvin Cook there with his 10 points. Safarian Jenkins, 8.5. Joe Mixon in your flex, 8.8. Blair Walsh, 8 on Yahoo, a little bit more than that. And then Bengals defense, a couple turnovers and sacks, not many points allowed. Good game against Cleveland. Yahoo says 11. I think it was a little bit more than that. So, but it wasn't enough. Said you got outscored there by 15 from your quarterbacks. Detling did better at receiver, but his running backs, it's no mystery here that Possum Magic is stacked at the running back position, and said he got scores from pretty much all those guys, multiple scores from 2 of those 3 guys this week, and a decent game from McCoy. So kind of making up for his weak, very hit or miss wide receiver core there. So he's going to be hit or miss all season long. But he's back into the thick of things, doing better than he's actually doing better than most of the people in the league right now. With that win, Possum Magic is 2-2. He's all the way up now to 7th place, while Space Antelope is also 2-2. He is in 6th place. All right, next matchup is, we already did Gags to Riches. The last matchup, Disco versus the Shawshank Athletics. And this one was already decided by Sunday night, I think. I believe it was. Seahawks or Colts in this game? I don't think so. All right. Shawshank Athletics, they stay also undefeated. They take out Disco. Final score 167.25 to 146.55. For Shawshank, Tom Brady 58.5, Kelvin Benjamin 14.5, Dustin Hopkins 27.5 or 26.5, Alan Hearns 8.2, Jay Ajayi only 4.5, DeMarco Murray only 3, Ben Watson a little over 9, Randall Cobb in your flex 14.5, Mason Crosby 5, and Jacksonville's defense, they were one of the long touchdowns this week. Yahoo says 20. They had a touchdown, couple of sacks, couple of turnovers. I think it was she was actually in the low to mid 30s was your score for Jacksonville's defense there. Enough to take down Disco, who he only got 31 points from Matthew Stafford. So a 27-point difference there between your quarterbacks. Probably the biggest difference here because the matchup was a 21-point difference. Amari Cooper, he has been awful. To be kind, he's been awful so far this year. Only 3 points from him. Michael Thomas has been your best wide receiver, the only one with consistency so far. 23 points from him. Jarvis Landry, an even 10. Carlos Hyde, 6.5. Jamal Charles, a little over 3. Njoku for the Cleveland Browns, a little bit over 3. Odell Beckham Jr. in your flex, an even 16. Gostowski, Yahoo says 15, so it's a little bit more than that. And then one of the bigger surprises, I think, so far this season is how good the Steelers' defense has been, fantasy-wise. Yahoo says 19. I think the total was actually about 34 or 35, something in there. So another good performance from them. Made this one kind of close, but the big quarterback difference there was the biggest factor, I think, because just taking a look down the rest of your lineups, Hopkins and Michael Thomas were pretty close. Your running backs were close. Your tight end, a little bit in favor of Josh there, but your flexes were close. Your Disco actually got a heavy majority for kicker. Defenses were fairly even there, so big difference there. Matthew Stafford, like I said with Matt Ryan, is it a Matt thing this year? I don't know. He's been kind of disappointing. He started out the year with a 58-pointer, and I see he's gone then 30, 44, and now 31. So he's been back and forth in terms of quality production there. So what? Again, it wasn't enough for Disco. He suffers the loss, drops to 2-2. Still in good spot though. He's in 5th place, and as I should mention before the end of the recap here, he hasn't suffered as many injuries and have a lot of problems in his lineup as other people have. Although I shouldn't say that, because Amari Cooper, he might be suffering here in these next couple of weeks from the loss of Derek Carr. And he's already been pretty unproductive this season so far. Let's take a quick look at his game log. It goes 17, 7, 1, and 3, or 2 and 3 basically. So tough to watch him, a high draft pick like that. But you get everything, every other place you're doing okay. So nothing to be too worried about quite yet. As for Shawshank, like I said, he stays undefeated. He is still riding on the tails, riding the tail. He's tailgating, I guess I should say. Hillbillies on PCP there. In 2nd place, Disco, you're still in 5th place. I think that's it for week 4. Let's see, take a quick look here. Like I said, looks like we have 5 teams all stuck at 1 and 3 now, and 4 teams at 2 and 2. So that's 9 teams. 9 of the team. Actually, no, it would be, yeah. Sorry, my math a little bit off. I think doubting myself there. 9 teams, 3/4 of the league, 75% of the league is 2 and 2 or 1 and 3. So only a 1-game difference between 4th place and 12th place right now. So the league, we said we've got those 2 undefeateds at 4-0. It's pretty much safe to assume at this point that Brian and Josh are going to be in the playoffs. You'll need a couple more wins. Hopefully I'm jinxing you by saying this, but you only need to get a couple more wins in the rest of the season to get you only need 3 more to get to 7. We've got 9 to go. So you're in good. You guys are in pretty good shape there. Everybody else, the New Gods, he's at 3 and 1. He's the anomaly, and everybody else is 2 and 2 or 1 and 3. And I'm looking forward to this week and hearing the podcast. Assuming everybody's made it this far, because said with those standings and everybody being pretty much everyone being either 2 and 2 or 1 and 3, these next couple weeks are going to be huge for almost everyone, and it's going to be interesting to look forward and see how the matchups shake out, because this is going to be these next few weeks are going to be when the teams that are going to drop are going to drop, and the teams that are going to try to rise up through the standings are going to make their stand, and a lot of them are going against each other this week. So we're already getting right off into it. I just noticed this. We have the 2 undefeated teams are going against each other this week. So there's only going to be 1 team that can get to 5. So unfortunately, I'd prefer personally that you weren't playing each other so that you could both get losses this week. But unfortunately, it can't be that way. One of you is going to move to 5. One of you is going to lose. One of you is going to get your first loss, unless you tie, which is always a possibility. And then we have, we got Isotopes versus FC Bohoric. That's a 2 and 2 versus a 1 and 3. We got Space Antelope versus New Gods. Both of those teams having problems, even though New Gods is 3 and 1. Injury problems for both of those teams. Be interesting to see what happens here in the free agent pool that comes out over the night tonight. What you guys have done with your bidding money, see how that shakes out. Two more 1 and 3s here. Everybody Ertz against Mighty Midgets. Disco versus Dub C, 2-2 versus 1-3. Gags versus Possum, same thing. And then the last matchup here on my list is the 2 4-0s going against each other. So this is a huge week for everybody, I think, except for really Brian and Josh. Right now is really just a pride matchup. You guys to see who can stay undefeated. But at this point in the season, so you've already got 4 wins. You're looking good. But everybody else, you're either looking to climb to 2-3 or avoid falling to 1-4, which is a really tough spot to be in. If you can, some of these teams, if you can move up to 2-2s, if you can move up to 3-2, you'll probably be feeling a lot better about your season. Some of these 1-3s, between Ertz and Mighty Midgets, one of you is definitely getting your 4th loss. Yeah, I think that's the only team that's guaranteed. That's the only matchup where it's guaranteed that someone is getting their 4th loss. Every other matchup is a 1-3 versus a 2-2. But like I said, those are huge matchups for everybody involved. It's going to be, and we got bye weeks starting this week, so you got to start thinking about that. Injury problems for pretty much everybody's team. I think except for Brian and Josh so far, they've managed to avoid. Well, he did have Greg Olsen, but he's been doing okay with Ben Watson. Everybody else on his team is doing getting him through here so far. So I see I'm just over an hour now. I think that's pretty much it. Like I said, Mighty Midgets is knocked out this week. Just taking a look at my notes here. There's one other thing that I want to just mention real quick. First, I want to apologize to Jay because after week 2, when he had a real close matchup with Disco, he emailed me, had a question about the stats and the scoring there. And to be honest, I almost never check my email anymore because it's 99 messages of crap for every one message that I'm interested in actually reading or consider important. Actually, it's probably more like one message is important for every 200 or 300 messages that I get. So I don't even check my email unless I really feel like suffering through deleting all that stuff. So I apologize to you, Jay. I missed that email. I don't know if you're on the Line app or Facebook messaging or even texting if you have my number. Those are a lot easier and more efficient ways to get a hold of me than email, really. Does anybody really use email that much anymore? So if you don't, I see the email was sent from your iPhone. So I'm glad you got one of those. So you definitely consider, if you're not already, hop on the Line app, and even if you put it in the general comments section there, where the forum where everybody is, or you can send me a direct message on there, or even text me, is a much more efficient way to get a hold of me. But you had some questions about the matchup there. Not sure exactly what you were seeing that I wasn't. So I went back and looked through everything, redid all the numbers from that week, and still got the same totals that are posted on Yahoo. Just going to go through this real quick and tell you, got it all scribbled down here on my paper. For Jay, for week 2, if you want to go through and look at this, here is your roster. I had Flacco at 40.75, Julio at 15.8, Golden Tate 6.5, Deshaun Jackson 6.9, Fournette 10, Freeman 20.4, Jimmy Graham 1.1, Jordan Matthews 6, Santos, your kicker, 10.3, and 26 for the Seattle defense, which comes out to 143.75, which is the total that has been on Yahoo. And then for Disco, his totals I have Stafford 29.4, Cooper 7.3, Thomas 13.9, Jarvis Landry, 20.8. Carlos Hyde, 15.4. Perkins, 1. Eifert, 7.2. Beckham Jr., 7.6. Gostowski, 9.9. And the Steelers D, 32, which is 144.5. And that's also the score that's been on Yahoo. So I'm not sure exactly where you got thrown off. Actually, I want to guess that it might have been Jarvis Landry, who had a -7 rush attempt. In rush attempts, we count those out. They don't count for your wide receivers. So he actually got Yahoo still tallies that. But whenever I go through the stats, I always have to look at the wide receivers to see if they had any rushing stats. And if it would either cut them out, or if it was a negative stat, like this one was a -7, had to go back and tack those points back onto Disco's score. And that's the only real discrepancy I can see and think of that might have thrown you off in your calculating there. I apologize to you for missing that email. If you don't actually watch this video, maybe Jimmy can pass along the message to you. Again, I'll go through it again if you want me to, but I'm pretty sure the scores should be correct. That might have been where the discrepancy was. If you're still not sure, feel free to contact me in one of the aforementioned ways. So I apologize for that. And I think that is the last thing that I wanted to mention. So I apologize at this point if you made it this far listening to me ramble for the first 25 minutes about world affairs, my opinion on world affairs, which I certainly don't expect anyone else to share. You're free to think whatever you want. Whether I agree with you or not is a whole other story. So that's it for week 4. And we will part ways this week and say good luck to everyone. And I'm not going to say, especially to myself, I'm going to part with some lyric Tom Petty tribute to him. I am going to say, it's good to be king, but I'll be king when dogs get wings. So that's kind of how I feel right now. So rest in peace, Tom Petty, everyone. Enjoy the week, and looking forward to the podcast. Like I said, we have some really important matchups here this week. So looking forward to what you guys have to say in terms of analyzing these matchups. You know what? I'm gonna add another minute or so to this podcast, because every week, you guys, when you do the podcast and you look at the matchups, you basically bunch everybody's, your receiver cores together. You bunch their running backs together, and is that really the best way to go about it? And because let's face it, you're going to pick Disco's wide receiver core every single week, I think, because on paper, they are very good. However, in practice, they've been very hit or miss, even possibly disappointing from Disco's point of view, probably. Same thing with Justin's wide receiver core. I feel like you're going to pick them every single week. I haven't actually gone back and checked to see if this is accurate, but I would, if I were you, just my suggestion, not telling you guys how to run your show, but looking at the matchups, taking more of a, instead of putting 3 receivers versus the 3 receivers, maybe going one versus the other, going 1 versus 1, 1 versus 1, 1 versus 1, and taking into account the matchups a little bit more in terms of not. So I just don't think. I don't want you guys to fall into that trap of picking the same teams every single week based on just the names that are in there on their rosters. There's a lot more to factor in than things like that. So, all right, enough is enough, I think. So, all right. It's good to be king, and I'll be king when dogs get wings. So, see you guys next week. Thank you.